They said the Lord's coming, but it's been 2,000 years. Shadow of a ghost, the shade of a cloak, of veneer.
A massive metro indeed. It's just gone 24 minutes before we hit 2 o'clock. This is your favorite hip-hop playground, the element all for the love of hip-hop. I'm kicking it with Landmarque. He just popped in during my shenanigans and we've been having wonderful off-air chats.
What's up?
Teaching me things about life, property, where it's good to raise a family. Apparently, is it true? Is it not? 012 011
is the place to be.
I section Giving section
you know, there's a boom gate. They're not allowed to come out.
Giving section No, I need to know. Giving section
the closer you get to Northwest, you know, the crazier it gets.
So wait, the closer to Northwest, my geography is terrible.
Yeah.
Like Boma Social.
Yeah, one of those on the fringes, on the edges, you know.
Is Mamelodi one of those places?
It is Mamelodi and Atteridgeville on this side, you know. But yeah, Mabopane, Social, Intervelde,
Okay, so that is our geography lesson for the day. Thanks so much for choosing us. We're doing this until we hit 3 o'clock, but hanging out with Landmarque until we hit 2:30. How are you today?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Fantastic. Yeah.
It's good to finally meet you. I was saying the other day how you establish relationships with people online.
Snap. This is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
You know, funny, in my head, we had met. Like, you know,
that's what I'm saying. You establish relationships with people online, via WhatsApp, through their music and the work that they do, and then one day it's like, hey, can you come into studio? And you're like, whoa, we actually have not met.
Dang. I didn't even think about that. Now that you raised it, I'm like, pin drop, you know. Yeah.
Okay, nice first impressions. You give me your first impressions of me, I'll give you my first impressions of you.
Thankfully, because of social media, like, I think I and remember
you think you know me?
No, I think visually yes, visually. So first impressions as in now, right? You're asking first impressions now.
Yeah.
I think you are like, you present yourself on social media, which is cool.
Okay, that's cool.
It's not like I'm like, okay,
which one is this one?
This is the person. This is what I'm calculating, and then when you meet the person, it's a different experience. Yeah. So I think you are fairly consistent in terms of what you put out on social media.
Consistency,
and who you are, which is not easy. I must say, it's not easy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So my first impressions of you. So I was thinking about it the other day. You come off very serious.
I do?
Yes.
I get it a lot.
Very serious, especially on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Because I'll be like, hey bro, good morning. That's literally like when you get those texts, it's not good morning. Hey bro, good morning. How are you? With a young coffee emoji. And then it's like, morning. And I'm like, where?
No, I
and then, but just because it's like, you'll be like, thank you for this and the other, and I'm like, okay, so it's not too bad.
Yeah.
But I think if I was a sensitive person, I'd be like, yo, opela akwatile. And then on social media, it's a little less intense.
Yeah.
But also very strategic.
Sure.
Not just I'm here to talk. Just because I can talk. And that's what it is. But in person, a lot friendlier.
Sure.
A lot easier.
That's a good thing.
I like it.
No, I'm just saying, but you know, like the non-verbal communication is tough. Like I think a lot of stuff goes wrong because you can't. I use a lot of gestures when I talk. You know, there's facial expression.
Yes.
You know, but even speech, quite honestly, is like 30% of all communication.
Right.
The rest is tone of voice. The rest is body language. You know, how I sit across you from a table. So I think the words are insufficient. Even spoken words are insufficient. So imagine text.
True. Especially because in text, tone gets lost all the time. Like I read your good morning as good morning, but it could be good morning.
Exactly.
Good morning.
You see what I mean?
Good morning.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So let's get down to some of the business.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you is Landmarque with a capital Q versus Landmarque with a QUE.
Yes.
What's that about?
Man, you know how that came about? About a year ago or so, I think it's when Stogie was taking out now I remember the visuals. Remember there was like a sheep.
Empire of
Sheep, right? You know? So I get a text, yo bro, shout out to what you did for Stogie, man. I know you were a producer, but you know, I didn't know like you guys and Stogie are working together. I'm like, hey man, I didn't produce for
Ginseng.
Stogie. What's going on? Yeah, check your name on the credits on the sleeve. I'm like, hey man, and the vela some vara Landmarque. Hey man, we so quickly jump on and I put in Google Landmarque producer, right? And then there comes up this dude in the States. You know, he's a producer. He opened a YouTube channel, obviously, you know, making beats. And I'm like, I've been Landmarque from like 2003. You know, I should have been smart and like kind of opened the
TM or the
whatever, right? That's why my Twitter handle is Landmarque. Right. Because I obviously got that before he did, right? So I was like, damn. And then I wanted to, you know, change my, or at least secure, I forget what it was just before, the page, right there, the YouTube page. And I couldn't do that. I went to YouTube and I wanted to make sure that it's Landmarque. And somehow I was like, damn, this is not gonna be doing any favors for me as far as search entries are concerned, as far as social, you know, media, as far as search engine optimization as well. Sir. So I had to kind of distinguish myself from the Landmarque, the producer in the States. That's how it happened. I wouldn't have changed it if it wasn't for that. In fact, also, when I was dropping my first single from this stuff, which is Something's Missing, when I wanted to, you know, upload it to social media, I mean to digital DSPs, right? Yes. I then started seeing like a duplication. Like sometimes I'd see, you know, Landmarque, the producer versus my stuff, and I was like, "Aye, guys,
this is tough now."
Sharp. Just added QU. Then I was like, you know, went, you know, friends, and what do I do? Do I say QUE? Do I say K? What do I do? Like, I don't want to lose the name. Nah, Joe, call yourself Stone Boulder or whatever. I'm like, Joe, who the hell's gonna be there? You know, so I was like, Joe, I'm keeping this name. Everyone knows me by it. You know, we're not gonna change the pronunciation. It's just spelled differently.
All right. Yeah. With that being said, though, right? I mean, you've been Landmarque, capital Q, since 2003, and then you were thrust into this change of Landmarque Q.
Hey.
Really?
Yeah.
Has the man changed?
Nah, same.
Has anything changed in that transition?
Nah, nothing. That's why I didn't think it was any. I didn't have to make an announcement. I didn't have to, because there was that thought process behind it. It's like, okay, you know, do I have to reintroduce myself? Am I any different from who I was before the name changes? Like, nah, it's still the same concept, still the same person, right? Still the same direction. So hey, no need for a big official statement stuff.
All right, so it's still the same person, still pronounced the same way. Yes. There's just a spelling type thing that's because it was just so weird for me, because even when I went on like Apple Music, I was like, wait, hold on, I don't know this. And when I look at your Twitter, like you say, it's Landmarque with a capital Q, and then when I go to Instagram, it's Landmarque QUE. Askies,
you know. But again, first man on the ball, you know, I got beaten. I should have made sure I got a domain. When I know my domain is now landmarque.joburg, you know what I mean?
I saw that and I was like, .joburg, Maradula guy. Yeah, these things get
012
tricky.
Need to get their game up as far as those things are concerned.
Why do you say that?
No, I mean, you know, Pretoria is always perceived to be slower than Joburg, right? You know,
is it not?
I don't think it is. I think there's a whole lot of. I think it's got its own culture. It's quite distinct in terms of what happens. You know, I think a lot of Pretoria people aren't fussed about what Joburgers think of them or
Rude.
What. Yeah, you know, they're kind of like, this is us. We got our own identity and own language. So yeah. But of course, you know, there's some things which are popping in Joburg. So you got to pop in Joburg to be sort of national, right? Which is in itself also another sort of misconception, I think, especially in the days of social media and the internet, right? You don't really have to be regional to get to the ears that you need to get to. But yeah, I think there's just some things which, like, I mean, I don't think there's ever gonna be a .pta or .pretoria as far as domains and IT stuff is concerned.
Okay, so Landmarque.joburg, who stays in Pretoria, right? If you had to look at the characteristics of Pretoria and the characteristics of Joburg, one, give me two of each and give me how you are like those two in each region.
Like when I think about Pretoria, I think farm. You know? So you know, there's a lot of farm. Yeah, like So there's that's kind of like the first thing, you know, like farm life. You know.
Okay.
There's a but Joburg is like the city of gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my head, Joburg is, look at like the mining town that Joburg is, because there wasn't a town, before the mines, right? So there's the hustle and bustle. There's the, Josie Maboneng, even when we were in primary and high school, it was always like the city of lights, the blinding lights. In fact, I got a track on the third EP, which is called City, which basically talks about that.
Right.
So that's what it is. So Pretoria, farm, slower paced, more leisurely. Joburg, hustle, Brothers of Peace did a track about it. What was the name of the track? You're likely to get robbed. You're likely to get stuck up. Your watch is likely to, what I mean? You're likely to change who you were before you got here. And you're likely to go back home and be like, I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, sharp. Yeah. But it's changed. Come on, it's changed, right? There's a bit of farm nyana with the expansion of Joburg. I see Joburg is expanding into, other areas. Because people want that experience. They want to be able to say, but they want to be. In fact, there's a guy that I know, which was crazy, right? He was saying to me, and he was here, right? And he said, "Dude, I can't take this anymore. The traffic is killing me," right? You know what that guy did?
What did he do?
He went and he now stays in Naisna. Like permanently. Can you believe? Like, dude comes in. He's not like, this guy is prepared to fly in and out for meetings.
What?
He's like, joke, I'm done. Like, he's got like a massive sort of location.
Right.
He has got like a mountain that he looks at when he wakes up. He's like, I'll come here when I need to. Okay, you got a meeting, fine. I can't do it today. Give me 3 days so I can find a flight. I'll come. Sharp.
Let me tell you,
those are the extremities. It's
as a Joburger, born and raised here, I can write this narrative. I can't write it at all, because even some of my favorite artists are. They rep Pretoria, right? Or they live in Pretoria right now, even if they're not originally from there. And some of the things are like, Joburg is so dirty. And I'm like, right. Joburg is so difficult to get around. And I was like, come on, what is that?
I'm here. I don't qualify under that description. That's what you probably want to say.
That's exactly what I want to say. But the few spoil it for the many. Right now it's just gone 11 minutes before we hit 2 o'clock. I'm going to play you Landmarque with Finer Art. It's this one. Yeah. This is my thing.
Oh,
this is my thing.
For the video coming soon.
Really?
No, we're dropping Friday next week. Yeah.
Look at that. I'm in alignment. I even know the things for the things.
Yes.
All right. So after we do that, then we're going to actually unpack the projects. We were just talking to get to know the man a little bit and understand him a bit better. Joburg, Pretoria. But here is the artist with Finer Art. A massive metro. It's just gone 8 minutes before we hit 2 o'clock. At 2, Kholi's going to come through and give us our full news update. But before then, it's still all for the love of hip hop, hanging out with Landmarque. Mr. Instro just bum rushed us off air to talk nice things and say nice things to Landmarque. How does it feel when you hear a producer like Instro giving you so much love for your craft?
Yeah, I think this project has done that so much. I'm not used to it yet because I'm not used to getting this sort of feedback, right? But I've had people who are purists and like legends in their own right, like dude, like, you know what, we the biggest critics as far as music is concerned, 100%. But we gotta let you know that this is fire.
This is the thing.
I was like, whoa. It feels great, man. It feels like finally I'm kind of able to convey what I've always had in my head, and it's being received in the way that I had imagined it or had wished it would be received. So it's pretty dope. It's like full circle. It's like, finally somebody understands it. Dude, that's what
Isn't it a little bit nerve-wracking, I would imagine, when you create, and you create very personally, and then you put it out there into the world, and it's just open to critique. It's like having a child. If your child is a piece of rubbish, people are going to tell you your child is a piece of rubbish. Right? But it's such a personal thing. So isn't it a bit nerve-wracking just being like, here I am on wax?
It is very nerve-wracking because you're kind of at the mercy at how those people perceive what you're saying, right? And it's really like a huge leap of faith almost to say, you know what, I'm gonna go out on a limb and kind of put this out. This is kind of like what I was thinking about it. It's difficult. I know some people who are quite detached from their art. They'll be like, I'm me,
Yes.
and this is my art. Like, it's two separate people. Don't judge me on the art, because that's, but it's, for me, it's both, somehow it's quite both, because it's one of the things that happened over the weekend, somebody hadn't heard me talk and they heard the music before, and then they met me for the first time. They're like, dude, you sound like how you rap and what you sound when you talk is the same. I'm like, yo, okay, you know what, that means I can't hide it. Even if I wanted to separate who I am from the raps, it would be impossible, because it kind of flows into each other. So I know it's vulnerability. You're kind of saying, this is what it is. I hope you get what I was trying to say. If it doesn't land, then maybe I need to find a different way of telling the story, or find a way of presenting it, or find a different way of putting it together. So yeah, it's nerve-wracking, but it's also pleasant when someone actually sees what you were trying to say.
Right.
It's a type of communication, I guess.
Or rather communication to come nice. All right, so Pride and Wrath, the second in the Sins series, right?
Yeah.
So before that, we got Envy and Avarice.
Yes, we did.
Right. Okay. So just for formalities and things of such, so I looked up the 7 deadly sins, and I also looked up the definition of a sin, right? So it says sin is defined as an offense against the religious or moral law, and a transgression of the law of God. Now, the biblical terminology of sin suggests that sin has 3 aspects. 1, disobedience to or breach of the law. 2, violation of relationships with people. And lastly, rebellion against God, which is the most basic concept. Now, the 7 deadly sins, as identified by Pope Gregory I in the late 6th century, are considered categories of sin as pride, envy, wrath, gluttony, lust, sloth, and greed. Right. Why did the concept of the 7 deadly sins inspire you to create in this way?
I knew I wanted to drop a few projects. I knew that outside of Last Days Fam, nobody really knew Landmarque, because it's always been part of a group. So I was like, I need to. So initially, in fact, when we last spoke on this platform, it was a mixtape, right? I was like, I just want to drop a bunch of mixtapes. I just want to kind of get my name out there, right? So I was like, okay, now it can't just be one mixtape and then you drop an album. What do we do? I was like, okay, how about we create this like an audio visual element, like almost like a series, like a docu-series, or like a trilogy of like, okay, I'm dropping this, but look out for this, So I was like, okay, how do we hook it all together? How do we make it, it's not isolated stuff, but let's package it together. And I was like, okay, 7 deadly sins. How many tracks should I drop? Initially, I was actually toying. Funny enough, I was toying with 666. I was gonna drop 6 tracks, every or 6 sets. Sorry, 3 sets of 6. I mean,
yes, 3 sets of 6.
And I was like, yeah, that would be dope. That would be great. That would be conspiracy. Similar to what Lil Nas is doing.
Lil Nas X is doing right now.
That's what I was gonna do. But I was like, yo, I don't think I'll be able to handle the media backlash. I don't think that's the way that I would want for people to come to know me. The
big coming out party of Landmarque as an individual artist.
It's becoming like a Lil Nas sort of story. I mean, it reaches. It does the same. I was like, okay, maybe what's the polar opposite of that? I was like, okay, 777. All right, cool. Okay, come, let's create a theme around here. We're gonna drop 7 tracks. Space it out. Initially, I was gonna do 7 tracks, 3 months, 7 tracks, 3 months, and I was gonna be like, 3 sets of 7, because that's like numerology wise, that's like the number of divinity, like of the divine. So that's the theme, right? I was like, okay, let's piece it together. What would piece it together? Okay, I looked for another thing that had a 7, and the 7 was the 7 deadly sins. And in that time, when I was looking at it, in fact, it was actually inspired by the movie 7, Brad Pitt and crew. Because if you can create a film around it, why can't you create the track or a number of sequence of tracks or a sequence of albums? Because it's got like Hellenistic origins, as much as it's used in sort of religious and Pope Gregory and all of those people, but it's got Hellenistic origins. It was a way for people to formulate their understanding about humans and how they behave. So like, this is a nice piece. Everyone knows the 7 deadly sins. They've come across it, whether by a movie, whether by the Pope or whatever, or in any other part of life, even in popular culture. yeah, let's club this together. And that's what it was, just a way of connecting the three projects together, you know, to try and link it together, to create a story around it. That's why I'm releasing so frequently. I just want to build a story around it.
All right.
Yeah.
So we've gotten the context. Now we're actually going to unpack some of the tracks from each of the projects. I've got some lines that I want to just throw at you and be like, and then here, where are we going with this? But we're going to do that on the other side of 2 o'clock. It's just gone exactly 2 o'clock. Polly is here to give us our full news update, and then we're going to come back and chat more to Landmarque. Just gone 9 minutes after 2 o'clock. We're in the second and final hour of the show. There's so much that's happening. Landmarque is here. Mr. Instro's trying to convince me that I can rap when I know that I can't. He's trying to get Landmarque to co-sign and those kinds of chats.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall make the announcement here while we're on live. I'm seated right across one of the most poetic persons in the world, and she's secretly trying to tell us that she can't rap. We don't buy it.
No. There's Mr. Instro in the background. We don't buy it. Okay, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about this thing, right? So this is my belief on these types of things. I can appreciate what you do, right? But that does not necessarily mean that I can do it. And I think when it comes to rap and hip hop especially, right, there's this idea that if you can understand conceptually what an artist is trying to do, you could be in that same position and do that same thing as well. I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's also this idea that, so for instance, I always say, I can't rap, I've just got a good memory, because I can easily recite songs back to front, do it perfectly like the person. But if you give me a beat and ask me to create like the artist did, I would not be able to do that. Okay. And that's why for me, I think maybe I shouldn't say I can't rap, I should say I'm not a hip hop artist. Okay. Because rapping is the verb, and I suppose you could coach somebody to do that. But I think it's very different when you are creating. I could not create the way that you create. I could not write for a song. I'm a writer, yes, but I could not write for a song. I can give you a concept and be like, I think this would be super cool, but if you had to put me in the driver's seat and go execute this vision,
Okay.
no ways.
Look, I think as you're speaking, like, I'm thinking about what a great visual artist would do. In fact, Fine Art is a perfect track that kind of mimics this kind of conversation, right? So finer art in itself is normally critiqued for its beauty, yes, and not necessarily for its meaning or purpose, right? You know, it's like, oh yeah, this is fine art, but there's nothing behind it. There's no substance. It's just something abstract. So I think when you are talking about the fact that one has the ability to appreciate something beautiful and not necessarily be able to do it, I think I get it, because I'm just thinking about the fact that I'm not an artist. Like I can't draw with a pencil, right? But when I see like a beautiful geometric paint, you know, Ndebele patterns, stuff that Baba Jeko does, I'm like, whoa, this is beautiful. This is a great piece of art. You know, DeBong's the graphic artist. I mean, ooh, I wish I could do that. I appreciate it. I know what it must take to make that. This is exceptional, but I can't do it.
Exactly. And you can even go as far as learning what it is that they did to get it like that, and have a greater appreciation, and find yourself in a space where you can have conversations about this art, even though you are not an artist. And that's exactly how I look at it. No,
I concede. I was accusing you.
Mr. Intro, I won! And I think for me, I just have such a great respect for what you guys do, that I wouldn't play around with it. Just me personally.
No, I have a reference for that, so I'm completely in agreement. Because there's a field of art that I am no expert in, but I love.
You see?
I can't do it.
What's that field of art?
No, it's the fine art. It's a visual, it's the
All right, so let's take a look at some of the joints from Pride and Wrath.
Yeah.
Let's start with Calypso.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I find it so interesting. Calypso, if I'm correct, is from Greek mythology.
Calypso is actually a type of sound, right? And I'll tell you the story about Calypso again. Calypso has got similar origins to the track Fog. It was based on a track by Abdullah Ibrahim called Calypso Minor. So Calypso is just a style of playing, famous in the Caribbeans. that sort of island sort of type of music. So it's got a very laid back vibe, which is why it's got that jazzy sort of undertone. So Calypso, the genesis of Calypso, it was meant to be a jazz track, like a piano based jazz track. You'll find, I'll just send you the link to Calypso Minor. You'll be able to draw the parallels there. So Calypso Minor comes from that point of view, and Calypso Minor is really telling the story. I know I'm preempting the question. I didn't let you finish it, but I want to take the liberty. I want to take the liberty of talking about it. We also shot a video for that, by the way. Look out for it.
Nice.
So Calypso is really just me in a relaxed mode, and think of Calypso in a comedy room or comedy bar, or a dark lit comedy bar with people sitting around, drinks passing around, and there's a live performance or comedian on stage. So that was the concept around it, and I wanted to touch on a variety of topics. I mean, it's like 3 or so verses, moving from difficulty, just within intimate relationships, family relationships, and then moving to stuff that I was observing happening around us, so I say things like, let's take it back to the curb, like elementary school. It kind of gets to me like seeing parliamentary fools. Mind loops like a record playing far away from home, from a blaring horn, and I'm getting shivers from the cold. So what I'm talking about, I was away at that particular time, and I was in a very cold place of this world, and I couldn't speak and engage with my family like I would love to, like loved ones, friends, relatives. And then I'm like, I'm just imagining writing this, reading the news about home, and I'm like, this is so irritating. So it's a lot of topics. That particular track is really like a melting pot of a whole lot of things.
There's something that you say there. You say, put my cards on the table, see what they're telling me, right? And it also got me thinking about this idea of spirituality, and also knowing the strong Christian roots that you've got as well. And it just got me thinking about this whole concept, because also in the world we're starting to see a great move towards quote unquote black culture, right? And black spirituality, and it's starting to become more prevalent and a little bit more accepted. But when you start to look at things like the staunch Christianity that gets a lot of a bad rep and a lot of knocks because it's a bit rigid, right? Things like Greek mythology, things like black spirituality don't necessarily align with that, but you've got something where you're saying it's almost like looking at the bones, looking at the cards. So what is this idea of evolving spirituality?
It's a big one, right? I think there is a lot of liberty, and because of the information age that we are in currently, right? It's almost impossible for these worlds not to merge, which is why I take the poetic license of including them, because being human, you are a multifaceted person. You might be an African who happens to be a Christian who lives, or who was raised Muslim. You understand? So there's a whole, there's components of you that you come with, regardless of what walk of faith you choose or that you eventually embrace. So when I say, put the cards on the table, see what they're telling me, the odds are failing me, put it on paper like a memory, right? I'm talking about the fact that I'm looking at the piece of art, for me, almost like, telling my fortunes with a piece of paper. So I want to take control of my own destiny through what I write. I want to be intentional about what I do, and if this is the method that I am sharing with you and using it as a tool to see into the future, then that's what it is. Call me a Bula Matambo, if that's what you want to call me, right? Like I'm taking the destiny into my own hands, and at that time I said the odds are failing me, put it on paper like a memory. It's life can be tough, right? And you might want to achieve certain things at a particular time in your life, and you just look like you're failing because you have these dreams. You got like, I wish I could have been there by this time, and you look like the odds are failing me. So this was like an escape for me, man. Like writing, it truly is a way for me to contemplate and trying to make sense of the world.
Therapy.
Right. I even say it in that track.
Exactly. Okay, so then it also transitions nicely into this idea that we find on Finesse, where it's a lot of black pride, a lot of black excellence, a lot of beating off your chest and really stepping into embracing who you are regardless of these odds that you might have against you. But I also found it interesting in Finesse. It says, what would it matter if I'm top 5 on some small talk, basic, average chitter chatter? Let's talk about it. That's the pride I was talking to you
That's the rapper braggadocio kind of, you know?
Right. So what are your thoughts about that? Because we find ourselves in a climate, in an industry especially, where a lot of what you do puts a lot of power in other people's hands, especially as far as whether you're great at what you do, whether you're the best or not. We find ourselves, we have certain panels and lists and all these other weird things where we put ourselves in this position and we put so much weight on these things. And I sometimes find it to be a little bit counterintuitive, but unpack that for me.
I used to get a lot of that, right? You know, people would say, dude, you like my top 5, like, you know, in Mzansi right now, like, you know, and I mean, I've been getting this for quite a long time, right? And I think when I was writing that track, I had gotten to a place of saying, you know, whether I have that or whether I have that, what shall we call it? Whether I get awarded that title or not is now no longer necessary, right?
You've been knighted and all that.
Whether I get knighted, I was like, I'm not gonna wait for me to get knighted, especially when I cannot control the context and the criteria upon which I'm being knighted on, you know. So I'm like, okay, what does it matter that if I am or not? What does it matter, you know? Because, you know, you have your own set of criteria that you want to pick and choose of who must be on top 5 and who can't. So I was like, you know what, I don't care anymore, right? Whether I am on that list or not is no longer the goal of this intention. You know, I'm doing this for art's sake, and I'm doing it to share my message and to bring people into my world, right? Whether I make it, you know, on those technical boards or those technical numbers is immaterial. I'm happy to be there, of course. I'm happy for the recognition. I'm happy for the suggestions and the, you know, the pats on the back. But it gets to a point where you're like, Acho, you know, like, you know, put me on if you want to. If you're not, there's no no love lost.
Right.
You know? No love lost.
Okay, so we take a look at Pride and Wrath, right? 7 joints, Envy and Avarice, and you've explained the idea of the 7. We've got Calypso, we've got Pain Sale, One Thing, Fine Art. One Thing I really love as well.
Yes.
I really love One Thing as well.
Track,
Finer Art, Finesse, Something's Missing, and Control. Out of all of these, which was the most difficult for you to pin down and why?
Control. Control was difficult. It's funny that it's Control because I actually was listening to Kendrick Lamar's track. I think it's Soulja Boy and a bunch of other people. I think the track is also called Control. So the tricky part about that track was there's no chorus in between, right?
Yes.
And I was like, you know, I wonder in today's world, in terms of what people, the amount of time that people have to listen to a track, whether it would make any sense to even attempt to make like a 3.5 minute track without a chorus or hook in between. So it was fairly hard to write, to try and be consistent in terms of cadence, in terms of, you know, bringing people and not losing them along the process. So I think it was fairly technical and fairly lengthy. It was also difficult to perform as well, right? You know, so I would say that would possibly be the most demanding track of all. Calypso was the easiest. I was telling the producer, Mark Andrew Sanders, I was like, you know, it's kind of crazy because I was playing, so to speak, as much as there's a lot of meaning to it. And, you know, when I wrote it, there were moments where, but when I performed it, I was really joking. The session was meant to be a joke. That's why I go, it's the rap, right? You know, I was really just having fun with it.
Right.
And I sent it to the producer, and he was like, yeah, this is sounding nice. I was like, I'm not even going to change it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Yeah.
How do you get to that level of detachment? You know what I mean? Because like I was saying to you earlier, I don't even know if it was on air or off air, but I was saying how you seem to be very organized, very like, I use the word pedantic about certain things. But when you are creating art, there has to be a little bit more room that you allow for.
A lot of flexibility.
how do you get that right? Especially with the way that you create, and conceptually it's like, okay, this is the overarching theme, this is what we're trying to achieve. All of these tracks somehow need to communicate to this greater thing. And then you go into the studio and you're like, I'm just kind of messing around, wada, and then it's like, nah, actually this is perfect as it is. Doesn't that kind of deviate from the original plan?
It does.
So how do you then eventually make it fit in?
Music is a heavy collaborative process. You know, there's music that's made in the chamber, which is personal, which you know, that but when it comes to this type of style and this sort of music in this genre, a lot of it is collaborative. Like, I have to trust the expertise of other people, right? I have to take a step back and say, you know what, I know how to make beats.
Right.
I've been making beats, but you had a certain direction with this track. Tell me what you had in mind, you know?
Right.
When you made it, you know, this, you know, okay, let me try and perform it in line, you know. So there's a lot of trust that you sort of give to your counterparts in the process of making music. So you cannot be staunch, and you cannot be... I'm not a producer, like I'll admit that.
Right.
I might have executive produced the idea and the concept, right? But I'm not a producer as such, right? There's some people who are like, you know what? We should do this, we should do that. Okay, cool, I'm happy to do that.
Right.
So you have to let go a little bit. You have to let go from time to time.
So which I have two more questions for you. Which joint on the project, this particular one, are you most proud of?
Yo, that's difficult, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know. I didn't create it. I just consumed it.
No, I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult. You know, this project, there will be, 5 visual pieces to this project. That's how difficult it is to choose.
Then you might as well do all 7.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I might as well, right? Because I've already taken out a lyric video for One Thing this morning. I took out a lyric video for Pain Sale. I took out a lyric, you know, the Finer Art music video. And there's 2, not the Finer Art, the Finesse music video, which is out. And then the Finer Art music video and the Calypso music video, which are going to drop in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
I love this project so much, I want to do visuals for all of the tracks.
Oh, you've got 2 more to go, just do it.
You know what I mean? Like, it's difficult. It's really difficult. But I think I'll gravitate towards the ones which were most reflex, most natural to write, most easiest to write, most pleasant to even record. It's a toss-up, man. I would say between Calypso and Pain Sale.
Wow. My joint doesn't feature there.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. So we were having a conversation, Mr. Instra and I, and then Mr. Instra, you and I. What about this idea that you make music for old heads? That it's not necessarily going to appeal to the here and now and the wave of now and that whole idea of what our contemporary hip hop sound is.
You know what's made me relax about, you know, I was quite apprehensive at the beginning, right, about, you know, don't make sure you don't get dated, make sure you know what I mean, you gotta take care of the trends, you know, the stuff's gotta be trendy.
Come on, give me a young skr.
You know, you know what happened, I was like, you know what, actually there's a space for everything. I was thinking about my music pattern, or my music listening patterns, right? And I was like, you know, I definitely have different consumption habits based on the mood that I'm in.
True.
You know what I mean? So there'll be a time where I don't make turn-up music. I don't fit that category.
Right.
And I don't think anyone who wants to listen to Landmarque necessarily wants to listen to Landmarque during turn-up. You know, they've got a catalog. They've got a playlist for that.
Right.
Sometimes you want to contemplate. Sometimes you want to drive. You know, sometimes you want to bust raps and be an imaginary rapper.
Like me.
You know what I mean? So I think there's music. I think everything has got a space. Everything's got a mood. I'm a heavy what's the word, it's not hypersensitivity, but I'm very responsive to music. Like, you know, I was explaining in one of the profiles, I was like, you know, I sometimes refer to myself as being a slave to the rhythm. There's always this sort of uncontrollable reflex that happens, that sometimes my normal governing faculties get set aside
Right.
because I just hear something that's moved me so much. It's not even in this genre, but I'm like, I'm compelled to want to know more about this artist or this track based on the strength that I've heard. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to get to is the fact that we listen to music for different reasons, and there's a
Right.
space for it. So Pro Instro thinks, this is what it is,
Right.
and that a lot of people might not want to gravitate to it. That's perfectly fine.
Right.
There's a place for it. There's a mood for it.
If we had to look at hip hop as a human body, which part of the body would you say
the
you
heart,
are?
no doubt, man.
The heart.
It's like the center of all things.
Really?
It is. No, but think about Miriam Makeba. Like I heard this one track. It was played by Nikki. It's called "A Piece of Land." Like that track, right? Miriam Makeba is most notably one of the, before our times, one of the most greatest exports of our country. That person never made turn up music. There was Pata Pata. There was a time for it, but then there was like that. I was like, I feel I was quite embarrassed when I heard that track, that I didn't know that she was capable of that, because in my mind I had reduced her to Pata Pata,
Yes.
the click song,
Yes.
that's the stuff that it's like, sometimes it's a disservice to the artist, because we are complex human beings.
True.
There's times where we really want to address something serious, and there's a time where we just want to play around. So I think we're complex. There's many faculties. There's a lot of components of the human body, but I would say hip-hop is closer to the heart, man. At least the type that I make it.
Right.
But for other people, maybe it's just as useless as an
appendix.
as a kidney, or you can live without the one, as they say. One kidney is good enough. Maybe hip hop is the spare kidney. Sometimes.
Wow. All right, it's just gone literally a few seconds before we hit 2:30. Kholi's going to come through with our quick news update right now. Then this is what's going to happen. I'm going to play you Landmarque with Fog, and then I'm going to ask him very nicely to rap for me, and I think he's going to say yes.